Okay, we're live. This is Jay Fidel on Think Tech Talks here on a given Monday afternoon. Today we're going to talk about photovoltaic at night. Doing photovoltaic at night. That may sound like an oxymoron, but it is a true fact. And that's why we invited Joe Saturnia of Island Pacific Energy come down and tell us how you do that. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Jay. How are you?
Good.
Thanks for having me on. Thank you for having me.
Well, I guess the first thing is the news, okay? The news is, I guess it was about a week ago when you rolled out your device, which is called EM Power. That's small e, small m, and then capital P Power. And this is, you can be modest about it, but I will say that it gives you photovoltaic at night, which sounds like an oxymoron, but it's not. It really happens. What is this thing?
Well, it's a response to the market. A little over 2 years ago, we foresaw that the market was going to come to a point where the consumer was going to be looking to have non-firm power at all times of the day. Currently, with photovoltaic or wind or most of the renewables, it only produces power when that renewable is around. So when the sun's shining for photovoltaic, when the wind is blowing for wind. When those natural resources aren't available, of course, it doesn't generate power. And so what do? Well, in Hawaii, we pull power from the grid when those things happen. But there's a need and a demand to be able to take that power and store that power and use it at times when it's not available, and that's what mPower is all about. It's a consumer appliance that's meant to sit on the side of your house or small business. It captures the power during the day that's generated from your wind, solar, hydro, fuel
So it doesn't have to be, maybe we have a misnomer for the title of the show to call it photovoltaic at night. It could be any renewable, it could be any source. This is the backup.
It could be, exactly. And it's meant to be provide power in a couple different ways. One would be the traditional off-grid, which would be somebody that doesn't have access to utility power. They want to have power at their home or business, and this will enable them to do that. So you store the power during the day when the sun shines, and then you use it at night so you can have power 24 hours. The second group of people are the people that want to have power when the grid goes down. So the next time we have some kind of grid outage, whether it's intermittent or it could be long-term from the next natural disaster, hurricane,
there will be one. There'll be a hurricane soon enough.
It's the ability to continue to have power in your home, to keep your refrigerator running, your food cold, your oven working, if you have an electric car, your car charged during an extended power outage. The third basic integration of the mPower unit is what we call grid independent. And those are for people that for whatever reason are having difficulty putting renewable energy on the grid because of circuit size issues, grid capacity issues, having a hard time getting an interconnect agreement with the utility. And what we can do now is we can say, okay, we can give you photovoltaic, we can put it on your roof, we can let you generate the power and you'll use it and store it. And if you come to the point where you need some extra power, you can just flip over the utility and buy the power that you need. So it's a device that empowers people to go renewable even when it's difficult, costly, or time delay to do it with utility.
Yeah, let me get that one straight. So, like net metering, for example, you don't have to do net metering, right? You don't have to send any power to them, and if they have some problem with it, just don't send it to them. Keep it yourself, and then you become your own net metering system, and you use it when you want to use it. That's the category you were talking about. Yeah.
That's right. And we're seeing some of the problems with grid capacity and grid integration, mainly on the outer islands now. Maui is a great example. And so if you're a customer in Maui and you don't want to wait 6, 9, 12 months to get a net meter agreement, you want to have your renewable energy now, or you're concerned about what some of the costs are going to be to do grid integration, you can choose to say, well, I'm just going to put an mPower product in. We're going to connect the PV to mPower. You're still going to be connected to the grid, but in an independent way. So your PV is never connected to the grid. You're not required to have an interconnect agreement and a meter agreement. You don't have to wait for that. You simply get a building permit, we pull it in, and you're enjoying all the benefits of renewable energy.
And you don't have to buy, aside from the connection charge, which is what, $16, $17, $18 a month, something nominal like that. You don't have to buy power from the utility.
You would not have to.
Then they don't have to approve this device either.
That's right. That's
I
right.
love that.
Yeah.
So you have freedom at last. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're very excited about it. It's a new way of thinking.
Did we cover all
about
the
doing
categories?
things. Yeah, we did.
Is there another? Did you cover the category of the guy who lives in, deep Pune?
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to have anything to do with the utility.
Yeah, and that would be off grid. What
Yeah.
we've done is put together a really clean, efficient package for that person. So instead of stringing this mad science experiment on the side of their house with wires and batteries and water filling, there's none of that. This is a clean product. It's an outdoor product made specifically for Hawaii. We were over 2 years in development. The point of it is for it to be an appliance-like product that's as simple to use as a PV system that gives you on-demand power, reliable power, day and night power.
Wow. So, okay, this is really, it's every time I've studied this, and I went to see your rollout, of course, and asked you a lot of questions that day. It's pretty
Are we going to roll tape of that? Is that
We have that on film, actually. So, but every time I talk to you about it, it strikes me as even more significant, important, disruptive, if you will. But can we talk about the mad wires that were there before? What have been the products up to this point that performed the same service or a service like this in terms of storage for the guy who didn't want to draw down off the grid?
Sure. The products that have evolved over the last, let's say 15, 20 years are similar in concept to what we're doing now. It was just never packaged very well to be consumer friendly. It was also never packaged to be at a whole home scale. The typical off-grid user would be somebody that's in maybe a small cabin or relatively small residence.
North Woods.
Right. They're just really looking to keep the power under the refrigerator, maybe power a TV at certain times. They happen to be technologists, so they're willing to tinker with the product, go out and check battery levels to make sure there's enough water in them periodically.
And put water in. That's a business where that's a hard business, putting water in acid batteries, isn't it? It just makes me nervous just thinking about it.
Yeah. So the science of this was such that you really had to be somebody who was almost a scientist yourself to go in and make this happen reliably. And of course the technology hadn't evolved yet, so it wasn't very reliable. Parts would break. They didn't have the longevity they do now. They didn't interact well with other parts. Certain electronics were more sensitive than others to the early stages of these technologies. And so we progressed. And now we're at the point where the technology is there. People talk about the next holy grail in renewables is storage. Well, the storage technology exists right now. The problem is that it takes a lot of space and it costs a lot of money. And the breakthrough we're going to see in storage is not necessarily a huge breakthrough in some kind of new storage. It's going to be cheaper and smaller, similar to the advances that we saw in photovoltaics and in wind. And so this is what we're seeing now. So we saw a need in the market that wanted to have a product that was easy to use, something that my parents could take a look at and they could understand, had a good look to it, no maintenance or very low maintenance, and provided the kind of safety and security that the consumer is looking for. And that's where we've progressed now.
The earlier versions, I recall, a lot of people they wanted that. They wanted a storage system in their house. There were problems about having these batteries around that would make you nervous, and they were big installations, and you wouldn't know exactly where to put them because they were, again, acid batteries, and they were expensive. And so there were a lot of things that made you nervous, but there were people buying them and people selling them. Some people right now today have them around the state, but it doesn't sound like a lot of people have them. There's a lot of reluctance in one way or another, and it was an incomplete, So right now, as we move into Empower, the time of Empower,
the age of Empower.
The age of Empower. Thank you. There's really no significant alternative, right? That's the kind of thing that you can be comfortable with.
Not yet.
Yeah.
And but we're going to see it. We're evolving. This is this is a natural evolution of where we were, and we're going to see some very interesting things over the next 5 years. And that's some of the things that we did with the mPower product, where we specifically addressed it to try and make it as open as possible, so that way we can use different kinds of renewables, we can use different kind of batteries, we can connect in different kind of ways, so that as the technology evolves, as people start to do different things, well, we're going to learn from that, and your mPower product is going to be adaptable to it.
Was there a moment, my niece is a filmmaker, she's actually playing in like all across the country now, and she's 27. She made a film called A Teacher. You'll hear more about it. But when she discusses this to the media, they say, was there one great moment where this idea, the idea for the film, came into your head? And she can answer that. Can you answer that? What was the moment? Were you drinking a glass of wine? Orange juice? Were you having breakfast? When did it come to you?
Well, most likely I was drinking a glass of wine, Jay. I don't think there was one seminal moment. Like I said, that we had been in development with this product for over 2 years, and we had recognized that this was a natural progression. When we take a look at the consumer use of power and what we forecast is going to happen in the future, what we believe is that price is going to dictate our technological advancement, and that assuming that prices continue to come down, the consumer is going to be amenable to, in fact, be very receptive to going with distributed generation in their home. And we think,
what does that mean? Tell the people.
That means they're going to be generating their own power at their own house, and that's going to be the primary source of the power that powers their house. We don't do that now primarily because of cost. It is more expensive. But as the cost comes down and the reliability continues to go up, people are going to make an informed decision. And if they do, this is the natural progression of where we're going to go, and you can see the benefits for it. Because if you're generating power independently in your house, and your neighbor does it as well, and your neighbor's neighbor does it, the next time we have some kind of a natural disaster, instead of everybody being without power, everybody's going to have power. So they're going to be able to keep their food cold in the refrigerator. You're not going to have crazy runs to the supermarket to get food and worry about that. If you have an electric car, you're still going to have transportation. You're not going to have to worry about gassing your car. Your life will, for the most part, stay the same if we have this independent distributed generation and get away from the centralized. We also think that further down the line as we look, we're going to see a complete change in the way that we generate and buy power. Right now we buy power, we buy it by what's called a kilowatt hour, and Hawaiian Electric charges us by kilowatt hour. What we think is, in the near future, that things are going to change where power is going to be inexpensive enough, or the paradigm is going to shift. So instead of metering us by kilowatt hour, we might buy some fixed rate amount of power. You might be able to, and we hope to be that company, to be able to offer, let's say, an mPower product on the side of your house, and instead of paying us by kilowatt hour, you're going to pay us a fixed rate, say $200-300 a month or $400 a month, and we're going to deliver all the power that you need. And that's how you're going to buy power in the future.
So let me get it straight. So you're actually, it's almost like renting that piece of equipment?
Sure. I think it could come to that.
Yeah, and then you get whatever that equipment can do for you, whatever it is.
That's right.
So you get a certain rated, level of equipment, and then you pay a flat sum for that equipment for, say, a month.
That's right. That's right.
See, I like that idea.
Yeah.
And you become the proprietor, the investor.
That's right.
And it works for you. Yeah. And then a market grows up around that and offers you multiple opportunities for whatever ratings and whatever quality of equipment you want.
Right. And it'd be a cooperative arrangement. So we don't have wheeling here, which is the ability to send electricity.
The
over
wheeling
doctrine.
Yeah. It's out of where is that? Out of Texas, I think, or somewhere.
I don't know.
On the mainland. Yeah. There are some places that allow that. Yeah.
But you can imagine if we did have that structure 10 years from now, where Island Pacific Energy is able to independently put power in people's locations, and we had some kind of a wheeling or transmission arrangement with Hawaiian Electric or whatever entity exists then, we would then make each of these independent power production boxes at everyone's home be interconnected. And so we would know if somebody needs more power than they have, we could transfer it from point A to point B. And we could do that because we own both pieces of the equation, because we're just selling the service of power to the homes. And so now you've got this cooperative organization in a neighborhood that's able to move power around as needed in a very independent way. So
just among the members of that cohort.
Sure. And it would be, instead of one single point of failure, which we effectively have now, you're completely distributed. but at the same time interconnected, so you get the benefits of both worlds.
See, I should have asked you this when this is really interesting, because this means that you can actually make a buck with you, right?
Well, that's the
Can you sell for American money here? So let's assume wheeling is possible.
Yeah.
Let's assume you have a neighborhood of 50 people, all of whom are trading back and forth. It can be like a co-op, right?
Sure, it could be.
And everybody just throws it in and takes it out, as much as, from everybody according to his ability to produce, and to everybody according to his need.
Yeah.
So, and there's no real accounting beyond that. It isn't necessary. But you could also have accounting beyond that.
That's absolutely right.
And you can throw it in there and get paid for what you throw in there.
Yeah, you can easily envision it. What we don't have here in Hawaii is time of use metering. Time of use metering being that you're charged a different rate for electricity than at certain times of the day. Well, you can imagine that, and certainly the technology is there to do this. You could have time of use metering that's the rate of power is adjusted every 5 minutes, 2 minutes instantaneously. It's almost like an auction rate, market rate type of mechanism. And so the utility, if they find that they need power, they could raise the rates and say, okay, we're willing to pay 55 cents a kilowatt hour, and you as an independent producer could say, okay, and then dump it into the grid. And this could all happen electronically. So you could program your mPower unit in the future and say, okay, when electricity gets above 60 cents a kilowatt hour, sell, sell, sell. And then when electricity goes down to 20 cents a kilowatt hour, buy, buy, buy. And it becomes this money-generating cooperative environment.
Why not?
And it makes money, and it has that economic kind of capitalistic aspect. But along with that, along with almost every capitalistic enterprise, has this side benefit of a societal benefit. The benefit being you're creating a more stable grid, a more interactive grid, a grid where people have full access to energy when they need it.
And you're addressing the market every nanosecond. It's completely addressed.
Yes.
Okay, we got to address the market too. We're going to take a short break, okay? The guy at my left is Joe Saturnia, Island Pacific Energy, and they have distinguished themselves by rolling out this mPower device, which actually Joe is going to bring to a program that we're going to talk about right after this break. We'll be right back.
I'm Bill Spencer, President of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association. We do monthly luncheon programs with ThinkTech about things that matter to Hawaii entrepreneurs, investors, and business service providers. So join us on the fourth Thursday of every month at the Plaza Club. For information about upcoming events or to join our mailing list, visit hvca.org. See you there.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're with Joe Saturnia of Island Pacific Energy. We're talking about mPower, which you got to know more about, because this is really, in my view, you can say it's a progression, and it's a natural progression in the marketplace, but I think it's disruptive. Sorry. Okay, which means it's much more than that. Here in our ThinkTech Talks, and we started naming this show, photovoltaic at night, but actually it's more than photovoltaic. It's any kind of renewable, any kind of source. The idea is this smooths out the curve. It smooths out the distribution of energy between customers, between ratepayers, I suppose, because it is a sophisticated battery system. Let's take this part of the show, Joe, and talk about exactly what it does. So there's two boxes. One box has the electronics, and one box, and these are not very big boxes. They're like, I'd say, 4 by 3 by 4, something like that.
2 feet by 3 feet, about 50 inches tall, and they're modular. So you take as many boxes as you need. If your demand is very low, you can fit it all into one box. If you have a reasonably sized home, it might take 2 boxes. A larger sized home, 3 boxes. And it all depends on what you want out of it. If you want complete autonomy and never have to worry about ever being without power and being completely off grid, it might take 3 boxes. If all you're looking for is to keep your refrigerator going every time we lose power, you can do it all in one box. It's completely modular enough to do.
It's interesting that, to me, not that I don't have this, but I think about it, that you measure your demand, your requirement, by how many days you think the longest blackout could take. Okay? If you're a one-day man, it was a pretty small unit. If you're a 2-day man, it could be bigger. A 3 or 4-day man, whoa, it's much bigger. How big can you get?
Well, it's effectively limitless, because you can talk about autonomy, which is what you're describing, is how long can I go without power? But if you are coupling your mPower unit with a renewable energy system on top of your roof, ideally, the power you use at night is then replenished during the day when the sun shines and the PV system regenerates the power into your batteries. So if it's sized correctly, the sky's the limit on how long you can go. It could be 10 years or more, and that's the classic off-grid scenario.
So putting it this way, suppose I'm working on, a box that can carry me overnight, okay? How long does it take to fill up the box so that it can carry me overnight?
Yeah. Well, typically most people's demand is lower at night than during the day.
Yeah.
So you have that working in your favor. So if let's say you're a consumer and you're using, let's say 1 kilowatt hour during the night, which for some people may even be a lot, realistically you're probably going to use 10 kilowatt hours overnight.
Yeah.
That's what you need to carry.
Yeah.
If you have an mPower unit, similar to the one that we saw installed, that's 38.4 kilowatt hours. So that's able to carry 3, almost 4 nights if needed.
But how long would it take to fill up that box to the capacity
Oh,
of
come
it?
back up. It depends on the battery and the situation, but let's say about 4 hours maybe, something like
really?
that. It could be that quick.
4 hours of not using the power from the photovoltaic for operating your house.
Yeah, well, typically though what would happen is, and regardless of whether you have mPower or not, if you have photovoltaic on your house, you're producing at any one instant far greater than what you're using. Because remember, the sun only shines an average 5.5 full hours a day. Realistically, it's from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. or some such thing. And so you've got to be able to accumulate enough energy between those 2 points then to cover all your energy demand for the entire day. And so your PV system is typically sized to be producing at any given time during the day for much more than you're using. So all that extra is going into an mPower installed system into charging those batteries and bringing them back up to full capacity.
So the likelihood is that that this system, I mean, if your photovoltaic system is giving you more than you need, you can pretty much fill up the battery box from scratch in a given day.
Right.
To last that night.
You should be able to. Right.
And that means you can go on indefinitely with a box that's small enough to just carry you overnight.
Sure. And what it highlights is there's 2 aspects of this that it highlights. One is that it brings into the idea of power usage in terms of when instead of how much. If you're going to buy a PV system now, the first thing that any a representative will ask you is, can I see your HECO bill? Let's see what your energy demand is. Mm-hmm. And that salesperson sizes the PV system based on your demand. Well, when you go to off-grid or storage type of devices, now it's not just how much do you use, but when do you use it. Because if you're using electricity during the day when the sun is shining and your PV is producing, you're going to use that energy directly from the PV, so storage doesn't really come into play. But if you're like me or most people, and a lot of your electricity usage, or at least some high demand items, are at night. I get home with my electric car and I plug it in at 7 at night. The sun's no longer shining. I need to have battery storage to carry me through. In those cases, that's going to require more battery storage. So it's a much more complex calculation to determine how much storage do you need as compared to just sizing up a PV system.
Yeah. Well, so if I got a system like this, I could expand it, I could change it, I could reconfigure it and all that, depending on my use, my expectations, depending on everything.
Sure.
That would really be terrific. And so, this is disruptive. I said that before, didn't I? And this is good. This is also disruptive on the whole system, because if everyone had something like this, whether you made it or somebody else made it, then the role the utility would play, at least in concentrated residential areas, would be very different. They would be more like standby, than actually, delivering generated electricity. This would change things. Huh?
It could. And here's a real-world example: is that, I think we all saw the announcement in the newspaper last week regarding the situation with the circuits and the grid here, and how HECO's trying to deal with it. And
refresh the people.
Yeah.
Tell them what it said.
In essence, that we've gotten to the point where I believe about 10% of the total circuits, maybe 50 out of 500, I don't know the exact numbers, circuits, these are electrical circuits around the island, have more PV installed on them, more PV capacity on those circuits than what the minimum daytime load is. And that's a problem because now you've got a circuit where customers are producing more energy than is being demanded on the circuit. And so now energy is flowing backwards on a circuit that traditionally has not flown back, had traveled backwards before. So we have an issue there. And it's 10% of the circuits, and it's growing fast because we know of the exponential growth we're seeing here in PV installations.
And the utility does not have a way to save that.
Yeah, I don't know the internals, so I don't know. That's probably a better question for someone at the utility.
Okay. So
but
next week in our program, we'll ask
yeah,
them. Yeah.
It's a scientific question, and I'm not familiar enough with the internal workings of the circuit, but it's a problem, or at least it's a stated problem. So, how can we address that now? And the quick way we can address that now is that if you are a consumer in one of these areas and you want to put PV in, you might be having a difficulty going into a circuit that's filled already. Well, how do you solve this? How do we solve this with the utility and alleviate any kind of problem? Well, the answer is we put a storage unit like Empower on your house. We make it so you never backfeed electricity to the grid, so that way we're not contributing to this oversubscription onto the grid. You get full storage, so now you're a kind of a willing participant trying to make things better, and you're getting all the benefits of PV because you're using 90% of the PV that you're generating on top of your house, and you get the benefit of backup. So in case the grid goes down, you'll continue to have power in your house.
I would not have anticipated this a few years ago. I mean, I think it occurred to all of us at some point that if you have a system that only works when the sun shines, you need to have storage.
Yeah.
The question was, where was the storage going to be and who was going to control the storage? Just as easily a few years ago, the utility could have decided that it was going to have storage. And there was all this talk about reservoirs, or pumped hydro storage,
yeah,
and big battery installations, that the utility would control. Well, we don't have that. And this is the way it's gone. The way it's gone is now. It's right here. It's what you're talking about at this table. This is what is probably going to, define the way things go forward on storage. The unit that is in your backyard, that unit. And so if everybody gets one, as I say, it'll change things.
It could. The traditional look from utilities and the scale that we've gone to in the last 30, 40 years in the United States is that this centralized power generation and distribution. And so when people thought even 3, 4 years ago about storage, they thought about big storage, the big pumped hydro. I remember reading about a proposal to fill up Cocoa Crater with water and use that as pump hydro. So those things were all out there, and that was the mindset. The mindset was it has to be big, it has to be scaled, this is how it's going to work, and we're going to need a big state-sponsored type of organization to make this happen. Probably not all that different than the transmission cable that they're talking about now. But in reality, what we're seeing in the marketplace is something very different, where we're seeing a lot of independent, let's say, entrepreneurs that want to act cooperatively in their own self-interest, but also in the self-interest of society as well, to provide some of the answers to some of these really difficult questions. And I think that's how we're going to see it, and I think we're going to see a lot more innovation going forward.
So I need to know how much it's going to cost. If I spend, I don't know what I spend, $30,000 maybe on the average house, $40,000 in total, before you get tax credits or anything, right? Total gross price, $30,000, $40,000 for
the Empower system?
No, for the photovoltaic.
Photovoltaic, okay, right.
Okay, let's assume that. I mean, is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, an average house might be $30,000,
okay,
and of course you get the 2 tax credits, the 30% federal and the 35% state haircut a little bit, but yeah, that's what it is.
Okay.
So the average consumer gets all their money back with interest and so forth in about 4 to 5 years.
Okay, well those are good numbers.
Yeah.
But let's say it's $30,000, and now you have the bright idea, because you listen to this discussion between you and me, or the program next week, which we'll get to, and you decide you want to have this. How much more is it going to cost to have this, special level of storage?
Well, it all depends on how much storage you want. And the quick answer to it is it could range anywhere from, let's say, $15,000 to maybe $25,000, before all the tax credits, so the retail cost. But you can decide for yourself how much you want. What I mean by that is that if you're using it just for battery backup, let's say we're just using it to carry us through a brownout or extended blackout or what have you, if you're willing to change some of your daily habits, that say not run the air conditioning so much at night. If you're going to charge your electric car, you do it during the day. If you're going to dry your clothes in the electric clothes dryer, you do it during the day, not at night. If you're willing to make some of those small changes in your lifestyle, you can get away with a very little amount of storage to carry you to where you need to go. Mm-hmm. And all you need is a little amount of storage to keep your PV running. See, something we didn't talk about is that one of the issues we have with the 25,000 photovoltaic installations we have here in Oahu is that when the power goes out, they do not work. I think people who initially install PV think that, oh, if we lose power, it's not a problem. I have PV on my roof, I'm going to continue to have power, but that's just not the case. That the National Electrical Code mandates that these inverters that make your PV system work, they turn themselves off when the grid power goes away, and the purpose for that is to protect the utility worker from getting a shock on the line, but from some inadvertent backfeeding of voltage electricity. So the 20 or 25,000 PV systems that are installed already all will cease to work, and you'll get no benefit from those if we have another extended outage.
Oh, interesting.
Right? So to keep those going, you need a product like mPower to continue to keep them running. And it doesn't take a lot of storage to keep them running. What you need is the storage to keep you electricity when they aren't running. So the mPower has two benefits. It keeps your PV running when otherwise it would have turned off, so you can use all the electricity during the day that you need, and then it gives you electricity at night to carry through until the sun shines again.
People don't realize, though. Yeah, as you said.
Yeah.
Woo. Okay, this is very educational. That's Joe Saturnia, Island Pacific Energy, and they really have come up with something. It's the mPower unit. This is Think Tech Talks. I'm Jay Fidel, and we are going to take another break. Sorry about that. We'll be right back.
Aloha. I'm Nicole Horry for Think Tech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Horry. Mahalo. Hello.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're Think Tech Talking with Joe Saturnia, Island Pacific Energy, and how you make PV work overnight. Let's leave the title that way, even though it may not accurately define all the things that are happening. So, in the mPower unit that you're building and offering, and which is, I believe, is going to change the market, you got two essentially different functions. You got the batteries, which in the unit I saw, that's in one box, one steel box, and you got the electronics, that's in the other steel box.
Aluminum box. Yeah.
Say?
Aluminum box.
Aluminum box.
That's
Sorry,
yeah.
Steel,
Yeah.
ridiculous. How could I even think that?
Exactly.
Yeah, bite your tongue, fine. Okay, so let's talk about the batteries first, because they're simple. The batteries, I remember, are sealed batteries. They're not batteries that you have to go put water in or deal with the acids or anything like that. A battery is sealed and it lasts until it doesn't last anymore. That's all.
That's right.
And the useful life of the battery is like 10 years or something.
We expect to get 10 years out of them. The mPower unit is actually, we're storage agnostic, meaning that we can use any kind of battery storage that's out there now. What we've decided to do is initially offer the product with an AGM battery.
What does that stand for?
Absorbed glass mat. And so it's a lead acid battery, but instead of being this liquid filled battery, it's a glass mat substance on the inside. It's fully sealed, so it doesn't off gas of any significance. And it's at a good price point. It's got a good longevity. It's a good product. It's a technology that's been around for a long time. There's nothing new or particularly interesting about that product, that technology. It is, but it's one that's been tried and true in the marketplace, but it is very low maintenance, and that's why we like it. But like I said, we can use any battery storage
So you can take that whole box and replace it with other kinds of batteries. The only requirement is that it take a charge. I mean, that it store electricity.
That's right. Yeah. And the next generation of batteries will most likely be the lithium ions. There are first mover companies now that are producing lithium ion for the renewable home market. We're not comfortable with that technology yet, not because lithium-ion doesn't work, but the biggest problem with lithium-ion is the thermal runaway issue.
That means it blows up or goes on fire.
Catches fire, right? And if you remember, 15 years ago, people would report that their cell phones had caught fire, their laptops caught fire. Well, lithium-ion has that problem. Electric car makers that use lithium-ion, like Nissan and Tesla, they've solved that problem. They do very, very good monitoring of their batteries to make sure that it doesn't get that way. Nobody has yet come out for us in the third-party market that we're comfortable with a lithium-ion product that correctly monitors and solves that potential for.
There must be a bunch of people out there working on that all over the country, the world. Yeah.
Yes.
The stakes are high.
There's 100 Chinese firms that are offering lithium-ion right now, and they're all trying to figure out how do we do this in a way that exudes confidence and trust in the marketplace that they're going to perform as appropriate. And so what we wanted to do with mPower is we wanted to make sure that we weren't locked into one technology. So when we began our development with this, we said, look, we want to make sure that we can jump to whatever the best storage technology is as easy as possible. So today, okay, we think the best solution for the consumer market is the AGM product. We think that's a good product. But let's say if you're a very scientific person or you're a real techie, you want to go out there and you tinker with this every week, well, okay, we can go with lead acid. You can fill it with water, put your little irrigation unit in the thing, and make it work that way.
I would prefer not to do that myself.
Yes, well, most Christians, right, exactly. And then there's going to be people that want to be first mover that want to get into lithium-ion. And certainly mPower would work with lithium-ion right now, and maybe they choose to do that, and that might be their choice. And then we don't know what's going to come down the pipe, whether it's the vanadium stuff or the zinc bromide. There's all kinds of different battery technologies that are on the cusp right now, and they're all going to be available and be able to integrate with the mPower product. Now with the aluminum cases we have with the mPower, they are 100% aluminum. We did that because the environment here in Hawaii is very harsh. We didn't want to have a situation where we had any rusting or other kind of problems.
Right.
And that's.
And you leave these outside. These units are meant to be outside, so you don't have to worry about any negative effect on the inside of your house.
That's right. I mean, our goal with the product was that we wanted it to be an appliance. So we wanted people to think of it the same way they look at an air conditioner condenser that's on the outside of their house, or maybe a refrigerator or freezer that they keep in their garage or something like that. It's something very, very simple, very clean, very understandable, and then it just plug it in and it just works.
Now what about the other box, or the other conceptual box of the system with all the electronics? What's the electronics?
Yeah, so the boxes are modular and customizable. So in the units that you saw, there was one dedicated to storage, one dedicated to electronics, but it could be all in
put
one.
Them in the same box.
Mix and match. But the power electronics consist of inverter chargers, and they handle the consumption and distribution of power either from the utility, from your PV system, from the batteries, and they coordinate all that to make sure that your house constantly has power. It's got all the electronics and the computer control in there, so we can do very sophisticated things like we can say, okay, don't ever hook up to the utility unless you really have to, meaning we could size the system and expect you to be off-grid and never have to go to utility, but let's say we have 3 or 4 days of rain when we just didn't get a lot of sunlight, and, well, we don't want you to be without power, so what do? Okay, we say if the batteries get below a certain level, go ahead and hook up to the utility, grab some power from them. If we ever go to time of use metering, we can tell it never buy power except at the lowest cost times. We can also...
And it can get information off some kind of cable, some kind of internet connection, maybe with the utility, about what the cost is?
Well, it would be a published schedule, and so you would know what the hours
Somebody
were.
would have to send it, or you'd have to inform it somehow.
Exactly, exactly. And then the other piece is that it can fully integrate with, let's say, a gas generator. So if you really didn't want to buy utility power, you really wanted to be off-grid, and you wanted to carry yourself in case we had 5 or 6 days of all rain and just generated no sunlight at all.
Well, that happened a few years ago. We had rain for a month.
Yeah, and so we can put a gas, LP, natural gas generator right next to it, and it will trigger that and turn it on when the battery needs some power, so it continues to get power, and use that as like your third reserve backup, just to keep power in your house and keep your lifestyle going.
For the remote possibility that we'd have another long rainy period or what have you.
Sure.
But I mean, short of a rainy period, assuming the sun shines on a daily basis, you don't need that.
No, you shouldn't need it.
Yeah.
If you, especially if you monitor yourself.
Yeah.
You know, but if you come home, you turn your air conditioning on, you charge the car, you run your oven, all these things that consume a lot of power. Well, then you may come into a shortage. And then, but it's nice that you can electronically control it and say, look, if I'm short of power, turn on my generator. You don't have to walk out and do it. It'll just happen automatically. If I run out of power, connect up to the utility. It just happens automatically. There's no light flickering. There's no 2-minute wait time while the power comes back up. Inside the house, you don't even notice. It's continuous power for you.
Is it internet connected somewhere?
It is internet connected, right? And so it reports on a constant basis what its current status is, so you can see how much power it's using, consuming, what the state of charge of the batteries are, all those good things, so you can keep complete control.
How about you? Do you get to see it too? Does Island Pacific Energy get to see how much I'm using?
We could, if you
But
want.
it's not necessary. It's not part of the device that you have designed.
Yeah, it's really up to the consumer. It's similar to if you're familiar at all with the Enphase product for PV. Enphase really was innovative in that they came out with a very, very good user-friendly interface on the computer, so you could see your entire PV system on the roof. And as an installer, we can see all our customers' Enphase. So many times we'll get notices if there's a problem or an issue long before the customer does, and we can give them a call and say, hey, we noticed a problem, dispatch a crew. And the same thing can happen with Empower.
Okay, but the device, the whole thing, both boxes, all the components of it, would continue to work whether or not that internet connection was live.
That's right. That's right. It's
Yeah,
just
to me, that's
reporting.
very important,
Right,
because
just
it could go
reporting.
down anytime.
Right. Yeah.
So you talked about the dynamic of the battery box, so to speak. Is there a dynamic of the electronics box? In other words, if the electronics should change or need to be reprogrammed or replaced, do you foresee the same kind of thing happening on that box?
Yeah, well, the reason that we're using the electronics we do on the inside is just for that reason. We wanted it to be open architecture, so that way when new technologies come out or new capabilities come out, we can take advantage of it. One of the things that I bring up is that we used to have that pilot program where you could take $3 off your electric bill if you let the utility turn your hot water heater off in times of grid decay. Well, we could certainly do the same thing with the Empower product, where we could use the same kind of relay, and we could take a message from the utility, and the utility could say, we're too much demand right now, go off grid. Boom, and we could just go off grid and take that demand right off the grid.
So it's a much higher level of smart grid than we presently have.
Yeah.
And,
but it's positioned to be very flexible, so that way, if let's say if the utility decided, yeah, we want to participate in this, we'd really like to see this happen, or we see this as a great way for us to integrate a lot more renewable on circuits that are 100%. And if you can give us the ability to control it, we think we can get to 150, 200% level penetration. We've got the capability to plug that kind of technology in very, very easily.
Great. I'm going to take one last break. Joe Saturnia, Island Pacific Energy, discussing the EM Power device here on Think Tech Talks on a given Monday. We'll be right back after this break for the final segment of our discussion, which will involve the program scheduled for next week called Solar in Hawaii. We'll be right back. Aloha, I'm Jay Fidel. This is Think Tech Hawaii, broadcasting live from the Pioneer Plaza in downtown Honolulu. We raise public awareness about tech, energy, and globalism in Hawaii. Technology is critical to our state. A vibrant tech sector will give us new prospects in the global marketplace and will offer great careers and make our economy more resilient. Streaming live on Ustream and Spreaker, ThinkTech allows its hosts and guests invaluable opportunities to report important events and discuss important questions, and to be heard here in Hawaii and around the world. You can find links to our live streams on thinktechhawaii.com or on our mobile website, m.thinktechhawaii.com. And you can see our archive on YouTube. It's all just a click away. We want to do whatever we can to keep Hawaii relevant, connected, and thriving in the complexity of the 21st century. We hope you will help us in those efforts. Tune in today. This is Think Tech. I'm Jay Fidel. Mahalo. Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidel on Think Tech Talks here with Joe Saturnia of Island Pacific Energy, which has rolled out a remarkable new product called EM Power. And what's perfect about this is it's in time, and will be discussed at Solar in Hawaii, which is a program that we're working on with the Hawaii Venture Capital Association and with the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, which is an important organization in Hawaii about solar energy and renewable energy, on Thursday the 26th, which is only, 10 days away. Exactly 10 days away from this discussion, and it's really going to be very popular. I'll just give you an idea about who's there. Joe will be on the panel. This Joe, Saturnia of that Joe. Okay. Well, we'll have Mike Gabbard, Senator Mike Gabbard, the chair of the Senate Energy Committee. We'll have Cully Judd, by the way. Cully Judd's going to be, he's going to be one of our introductory speakers. He's the father of solar in Hawaii.
Yes.
And I'm sure it'll be interesting to see his comments. We're having Leslie Cole Brooks moderate. She's the executive director of the Hawaii Solar Energy Association. Mike Champley, one of the commissioners of the PUC, an important commissioner there, is willing to be there. He'll be there, and I'm really excited to see him be there. Likewise, for Scott Siu, he's operations vice president, or one of the operations vice presidents at Hawaiian Electric, and he's also going to be in our show here in a few days. But we'll see him on the 26th representing Hawaiian Electric Company. Riley Saito from SunPower. Mark Duda from Revolusun, who will be here on the next hour of our Think Tech this afternoon. He's probably outside right now. And Marco Mangelsdorf, who is a very interesting thinker from the Big Island, running a company called Provision Solar. What do you think of that panel, Joe? This is kind of interesting.
I think it's a great group of people. I think it's going to encompass a very broad mind view of what's happening in the solar industry. You've got people on that panel that take a very progressive view on where they think we should be in Hawaii. I think there's other people on the panel that take a very conservative view. And so it'll be very interesting to see in that one room the different perspectives on where we are today, which is very different. Some people have very different opinions on where we are today and where we should be in 5-10 years from now, and more importantly, what path we take to get there.
Yeah, well, the operative question seems to me is something like, how is the solar industry going to do in the long haul? In other words, so we have agriculture, and we have the military, and we have tourism. We don't have much of a tech industry, and to some extent we have an energy industry, but solar is one of the elements of that. And the question is, is solar, is a lot of people, there's 300 companies, there's thousands of people who go out and install solar units all over the state. But is it going to last forever? Is it going to be part of the state, landscape in 20 or 30 or 50 years? Or is it going to hit some sort of saturation point, or some point where it's no longer as hard driving as it is now, and sort of go down, a decline? You have any thoughts about that? The operative question is what we're going to talk about.
Clearly that we can't continue the level of growth that we have because the market's just not big enough. And as we're seeing, as evidenced by last week and HECO's stance in the paper, and what's happening in the outer islands, we don't have the infrastructure ability to continue to load on a lot of non-firm renewable energy onto the grid as it exists today. So we're going to see a natural slowdown. It's been very, very go-go. That's what happens when you have this kind of euphoria. I don't know if we're going to have so much as a crash as maybe a slow stop or a slowdown. And there is going to be some consolidation in the market. There's going to be some cleansing of the market from players that are here just for quick money reasons, and instead of trying to be long-term players to provide long-term products and services to customers in the community. But we'll always have a solar industry. It's just a question of how big is it going to be. The things that solar have working against it is that we have a product that lasts a very long time and requires very little maintenance. There's no planned obsolescence. Our closest cousin is probably going to be solar hot water, but of course we know with solar hot water, those panels last 10, maybe 15 years, and they require a replacement or at least some maintenance. With PV, it could go 25, 30 years before you may have to have any maintenance done. So even on the maintenance side, it's going to be a relatively small market in comparison. I think the companies that do survive are the ones that are going to be concentrating on customer service, providing value, have good cost controls, understand how to produce the best quality product for the lowest possible price, and diversify and make sure that they can continue to offer the product and service the consumer wants.
My proposition here, and one of the reasons I'm so interested in your product, EM Power, is that I think it could change this formula. It could change what happens going forward. You know, some of the constraining factors that you mentioned wouldn't be so constraining if everyone had an EM Power or a similar kind of storage system, and then we could really go like, complete saturation,
yes,
continuing saturation around the state, and we wouldn't have any negative effect of that.
That's right. So if we're at 5% saturation now, and we continue to drive the cost down, and mPower becomes a very, very good economic alternative, we could go from 5 to 50, which is where solar hot water is, in a relatively short period of time, and do it in a way that not only gives the consumer the benefits of solar energy, for environmental and economic reasons, but also then you're contributing as a good citizen to the overall sustainability and stability of the electric grid.
Yeah, I think this is a big feature going forward. And the good news, by the way, is that Joe is bringing one of these things to the program.
Yes, you've been very kind in allowing us to bring a unit, so we'll have one of our units brought up to the Plaza Club next Thursday at 11:30 for the solar luncheon, and we'll have some staff there and available to answer some questions and give some basic demonstrations.
This will be really important, really useful. Really appreciate you doing that. Okay, anyway, this is Think Tech. If you want to come to that program, go to hvca.org. That's where you sign up for it. It's just 10 days away, and it's a good idea to sign up early because I think it's going to be crowded, this one. Thank you so much, Joe.
Okay, thank you.
Joe Saturnia, Island Pacific Energy, the makers of the EM Power device, just rolled out. This is Think Tech Talks, and we're done. Thank you, Joe.
Folks, thank you.